everybody, I'm Jeff Bower.
And I'm Joey Marino. Welcome to Actor Chats.
This week on Actor Chats, we have the first part of our discussion with Laura Innes.
You probably know Laura from her iconic role of Dr. Carrie Weaver on ER.
This week, Laura talks about traveling to Stratford Festival as a kid, performing theater in Chicago and New York City, and how Meisner training prepared her for her role on ER.
Actor Chats with Laura Innes.
I'm really happy Actor Chats welcomes, and we're in Laura Innes' home, and we're so happy to be here.
Thank you, Joey. I'm so happy to be here too. This is great.
Yeah, so I'm Joey Marino. This is Jeff Bower.
So we usually start off with, I'm kind of a comic book nerd, so we start off with, I like to call it your origin story, as in how you decided entertainment was what you wanted to do. Was there like a specific moment or incident when you were younger, or what do you think was the spark that caused you to want to do this?
You know, I think like a lot of actors, there probably were a lot of different moments. But I certainly remember from the time I was very young being that kid in the neighborhood who was wanting to put on a play and organizing everybody to do, play in the garage. And then I think I was very much supported by my family in that we went... every summer we went to Stratford in Canada and saw the Shakespeare Festival there. I'm from Detroit, so that's not far. And I guess I remember a couple things. One is very specifically, one time we had gone up to Stratford and they did a fantastic job there, and we couldn't get tickets to a play. So I said to I was pretty young, maybe middle school. And I said to my parents, well, just take me there, and they said if you wait in line, you can get tickets if you come early. So I went early, and my parents left me there, and then nobody was in line yet, so I walked around the back of the theater. I was just like poking around, and they have sort of a globe-style theater, so circular. So there were these windows that were close to the ground, and one of them was kind of open, and I looked in this window, and there was a guy there who was like a janitor or something. And he goes, oh, what are you doing? And I said, no. And he said, oh, come down, you want to look around. So God knows this guy, we're lucky he wasn't some freak. But he took me all around, and he showed me like the wig room and the costume room, and he let me stand on the stage, and he, I think it wasn't Vanessa Redgrave, but... Come on. Oh, she's doing everything now.
You'll come back.
Yeah. Anyways, there were amazing people there that summer. And so that was a moment when I felt like, oh, this is a real thing that people do, for a living. Yeah, just an idea. And then when I was growing up also, I remember seeing on TV... the Williamstown Theater Festival used to do these TV versions of the play.
The TV
and I remember seeing The Seagull and seeing Blythe Danner and...
you were going for the good stuff.
Yeah, I guess I always had like good taste. Well, that would have been probably, I don't know, 9th grade or something like that. So I think those kinds of performances, I remember seeing Blythe Danner playing Nina, and that kind of thing that was just a deeper experience of watching something. You thought, oh wow, well that's something different. And then also I would say I was very much influenced by watching these Saturday afternoon movies that were on. There used to be old movies on in the afternoon. When I grew up in there, and there were all these like Elia Kazan movies, Baby Doll,
with Carol Baker,
and then
Eli Wallach.
Yes, and Remember the Wedding.
Yes.
With I think Julie Harris played like the.
Oh my gosh!
So,
what a voice!
Yes.
Did you relate to Julie Harris much?
I think I did because I felt like
similar red.
Yeah, I had that a little bit of that tomboyish. Slightly, sort of.
Remember the "We and Me" speech?
Yeah, my gosh!
I saw that. The "We and Me," and I was like,
oh. Yes.
She's brilliant.
Yeah. So I think those things felt like, they just had so much meaning for me. I don't really even know why. It was just these things resonated.
Did that happen before you went to the theater, though, or it happened like on the stage, or it was probably there already in a way?
It was kind of there already.
Yeah,
I certainly remember like being the kid, like in second grade. I remember playing like Thomas Pitt in the historical drama or something. I don't know. There were just these weird things that made it incredibly interesting to me. I just was always interested in it.
And you said your parents were supportive.
Very. And I'm the youngest of 6, and my family had very little money, so it really makes no sense that they were supportive. But I think they just...
Knew you loved it.
Yeah. I don't think they ever really thought that I would do it forever. And
Maybe
and
you
then
didn't think that.
I always felt like, I think like a lot of people, like I'm still getting away with this, like every step of the way, like, wow, I'm at this other level and I'm still getting work, wow. And I remember probably the most significant thing was when I was 16, my high school drama teacher, and we had a great drama department in my high school also, which was incredible when I look back on it. And he said, oh, you should go to this program at Northwestern University. They do like a high school program for, theater students. And I didn't know from anything. And I was like, oh, what's that? So he was very direct. He said, here's the thing, fill it out. And so I filled it out, and I was like, oh my God, this is so expensive. I think it was $300 or something for 5 weeks.
Right.
But my mom and dad were like, oh yeah. Then I got in, and I went there, and again, it was just incredible because the people were amazing, and we had incredible professors, among them like Frank Galati was one of our professors, who's a very brilliant, he works a lot with Steppenwolf.
Right.
But he adapts material, usually nonfiction, to the stage, or he did an incredible...
So this is a guy that...
He's like super... He's like on a top level. So we had people like that all around us, and we
was
had
that
kids.
in Detroit?
That was... Northwestern is outside Chicago.
That's when you'd moved from then. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was during the summer.
Yeah, the summer.
So I went there for 5 weeks.
Well, Chicago really has a theater.
Yeah.
We were talking about it that... Chicago still is just, that's where theater is in a way.
It's incredible.
Don't you think?
Yeah. And I went then to Northwestern to school.
Wow. Yeah, Northwestern.
So that was the sort of normal connection after being in the program.
Right.
And then I was just really fortunate because when I was in Chicago and when I graduated was just the time that Steppenwolf was sort of burgeoning, and we actually would go to this little theater in the basement of a church, and that was the very first home of Steppenwolf in Chicago.
Who was there like when you were you kind of just knew those guys?
We knew them a little bit, but they're about my age, but like John Malkovich, those
like
people, they're a little bit older. Not that much older, but a little bit older. So we would go see their shows, and they were just remarkable. I mean, I remember going to see John and Gary Sinise in True West, which was sort of a historical...
It was
and it was in this little basement in this church, and we had never seen anything like it. And they would... I remember John did this thing where he drank this beer just in one, the beer just went down his throat. And then whenever they had to go to the bathroom, they'd just walk off stage because the bathroom of the church was right there.
Right.
So they'd keep talking, and you'd hear them going to the bathroom. And I mean, it was just like this incredibly... But
all the good stuff that we wanted.
Yes. Very visceral.
Yes.
And then I was, I met John, and I did a play with John.
Oh.
I was in a production of Streetcar.
No way.
Yeah, and John actually played Mitch.
Oh,
I mean, everyone
he
thinks
would
he played
probably
Stan.
be a funny Mitch.
He was hilarious because he was
that.
very sweet and funny, and then when he got mad, it was terrifying.
Oh, God.
Like when he turns on her.
Oh, I know.
And that production was directed by Bob Falls, who directs a lot of amazing director and Broadway director. And that production actually, sidebar, Tennessee Williams came to.
Holy crap.
Yeah, because Bob had been writing to him, because Bob was just very bold. He's like, I'm just going to write to him. Yeah. And he said, send me anything I can put in. He put in like additional material, and Tennessee sent him copies of letters. So he came, and it's a tiny little theater. And he was wearing like this full-length white a fur coat. And he just, through the whole play, you just hear him
Laugh. I
laughing.
was known for
like
his
Stella,
laugh.
you'd say, Stella, Stella, Stella Postan. And he'd be like, oh! And then after the show, there's a little tiny, just dive bar. We went, he was there. And I walked through the door and he goes, Stella, Stella, Stella Postan. And he was just like an older man, but he was I remember him being very vivacious. I mean, I was like 22 or something.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it was incredibly vibrant. And then I worked there for a couple of years. And then I was cast in a play called Edmund, which is a David Mamet play.
David Mamet play, yes.
Yeah, and that was the original production at the Goodman Theater in Chicago.
Wow.
So that moved to New York. So then when that moved, I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm going to do this play in New York. And it was at Provincetown in Greenwich Village. And so we did that, and I think I was just sort of sleeping on somebody's couch. And again, it was sort of just luck. It was like David Mamet play, and David was there, and the show got a lot of attention because it was a new play. And
your cheekbones helped.
My cheekbones. So I had a wonderful part. So I ended up getting this agent, and I said the next day I went into the dressing room and said, wow, this agent talked to me. And they said, well, what was his name? I said, Jeff Hunter. And they go, Jeff Hunter? That was like, he was like big time. Kevin Kline, Morgan Freeman, all these big agents. Oh, so, it's like one of those things where you just feel like, gosh. So I was in New York, and I worked in New York for 10 years. And
that's crazy.
Yeah, and then whatever. That's
I
my little amazing. But very much, I do think it's this incredibly elusive combination of diligence, hard work for sure, talent for sure, incredible luck for sure.
Sure.
I think how you deal with people is a big part of it.
Oh, that's huge.
So I don't think you know all that going into it, but for all the stars to align, it's pretty. I feel incredibly lucky. That's my long-winded way of saying
Well,
that.
when you're doing stage, I know when I like some of the things, the gritty things that you liked, and then I remember at some point I was thinking, well, how some work is a little more, showy or something, and I was always fascinated with film, and so and television, and so since you watched it, and that has a different kind of reality. Were you curious about that?
About film?
About film, and wondering how is this work going to translate?
Yeah, I think that for me, my scale suited film to a certain degree, unbeknownst to me. Because I think I never was super broad, super. And just as a person, I tend to be sort of a more contained person. So I remember doing plays, and I'd be in rehearsal, and I had this line, I don't understand this. And so I kept saying, I don't understand this. And the director would go, oh, what? And I'd go, no, say the line from the play.
That's awesome.
Nice.
So I was like, oh my God, this is so great.
Nice.
And so I certainly was curious about it. But once again, I felt like, I could never get that kind of job. I mean, that's for people who are much more beautiful or much more can do that magical thing. So I think
so you still had a mythology about it.
Most, and still do. I mean, I think it still feels like, wow. And I am still amazed by all actors, but certainly by film actors that just that it happens right before our eyes. That's astonishing to me.
Well, what kind of your training? I mean, I guess there's all kind of methodologies, and when you're in school, Northwestern, I'm sure they kind of borrow from this and that. Was there an eclectic bit of technique that you were getting, or things that you lean towards in terms of that?
Yeah, and this is another way that I feel very lucky. I loved the training that I got at Northwestern, and I very consciously took from many different acting teachers. Like it's sort of a thing in acting school. I don't know if it was that way for you guys, but you sort of stick with your teacher, you know.
Oh yeah,
teacher.
you kind of.
So I took from all the different teachers. I felt like I gained different things from all of them. But then when I graduated, I started taking Meisner classes, which was very big in Chicago then, from David Mamet and Patty Lupone was started out there.
Yes.
They were all doing this Meisner stuff. So I started doing that, and I don't know, have you
The
taken
repetition?
Yes.
You know, it's funny. I wish I would have. I kind of started the Strasberg-y stuff, and it's damaging to me. I'm sorry, Lee, wherever you are. But to me, because I'm internal, so I would throw everything inward where I'd get a little stuck. Or if I didn't have these big moments, I felt I wasn't acting, because you get applauded for, if you're weeping and stuff, it's the next coming. And you realize, I'm just waiting for these big moments, and then I'm getting stuck. So I felt my acting sort of took a stop and start quality till I felt it, because I'm a feeler.
Yeah.
So it got tricky, and then I read that book. Meisner's book, and at least I'd kind of learned a little more to put it up.
Yeah. Well, another thing that happened to me when I went to New York, because of course, like everybody, you read about the group theater in Strasbourg and Uta Hagen and Stella.
I was in Kazan and Klerman, Harold Klerman.
But I was doing the play, and one night, this play Edmund, this guy was there in like totally black clothes, like a black shirt, a black suit. It was very put together, and he said, and he was with like two other people who were dressed similarly. And he said, "Oh, we really enjoyed your work." And I said, "Oh, thank you so much." And they said, "We'd like you to come observe Stella's class."
Oh, no.
So I was like, oh, gosh, how cool. That would be great. So it was all very strange, though. He said, this is where you come, and we'll save you a seat in the front row. So I go to this hotel, and they have this like ballroom that was for her class, and all these chairs were lined up, and there was a little stage in front with a table and a chair and a glass, like a crystal glass. And everybody was sitting in these chairs, and then she came out and sat behind this table.
And she's grand.
And everyone clapped.
Very grand.
Oh, very grand.
Yes.
And I was just fascinated, and everyone's copiously writing notes. And she said, and she was saying interesting things, but it wasn't necessarily, to me, earth-shattering.
Right.
Like she was talking about Three Sisters. When you play the Three Sisters, you have to have the capacity to speak 5 languages, and you play the violin, and it's in your body that you're musical, that you wear these kind of clothes, that you have this history of, the aristocracy, and that wasn't, it's always good to be reminded of that, but it wasn't like something that hadn't been discussed in other classes.
Exactly, because you discussed.
Yeah, I remember one of my teachers at Northwestern was very keen on all that stuff, which was helpful. But I wasn't writing in my book, and then she stopped talking. And she said, "Excuse me, don't you find this interesting?" And I said, I think it's real. And, it was like 250 people. I go, "Oh, no, I think it's very interesting." She goes, "Well, why aren't you writing it down?" And I said, I just, I retain more if I'm not distracted by writing. And I thought, this is crazy. Like, this is horrible.
Right.
Because all these people their individuality is being sucked from them. And Lee Strasberg, the same thing, because I said, I'm going to check out all these places. In Strasberg, they brought me in, and he had passed then. And they said, they put me in this room, and they said, watch this video first. And it was Lee Strasberg, it was him. It was he on the video, and he's talking about the role of acting, and this is what you do, and they said right away, you can't work for 2 years.
Oh my goodness gracious!
And I was like, I'm working now, I
got to be somewhere in about 10 minutes.
Yeah. So the Meisner, the Meisner is not the be all, but it is completely about moment to moment, and not watching yourself and trying to get rid of the horrible self-consciousness.
I was thinking, if I had to do it again, and that's just the best. I think probably one of the best ways to start is with Meisner, because at least it puts the attention outside of yourself and into listening, because everybody always tells you Kathy Bates and such. We talked to, she's telling me, just become a good listener, and easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's always really good advice.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are people who are so good and so skilled, and you watch them and admire them. But if you feel like they're not listening, if you feel like they're not responsive, you just don't believe it, and you might admire it and go, "Wow, it's so beautiful," or "so skilled," or "she cries on a dime," but you don't feel the reality of living in that moment. Mm-hmm. And I think for a lot of us, the self-consciousness is the most horrible part of it.
Because we're sensitive. Actors are sensitive, and I think, we, of course, naturally, if you have a camera, and that's how it takes me to camera work. It's like, I don't know about you, but one of the very first time, even if I was doing a play in New Orleans, and I remember being pretty comfortable on stage, and that we were doing, and then they wanted to film a promo or something, and I fell apart. I couldn't remember anything. You know what I mean? So, because that camera, and I remember the very first time I stood in for Anthony Edwards, in a movie in New Orleans, they just put the tea on the ground, and I had to stand it, and the camera's like that, and close up. I was shivering because I didn't have any lines because I was just standing in, but I didn't know what to do. And so how was that when they first put a camera in your face?
Well, it's another thing where I feel very lucky because I had done a fair amount of film, but like little parts in TV shows, etc. And I had been the most successful doing like 3-camera.
Oh, because it was more like...
Because it was like doing a play. Mm-hmm. And so when I started on ER, I didn't have that much experience with that kind of real...
the reality of it?
With the actual film, thing.
Yeah.
So I was concerned, but I feel like the movement and the energy of ER takes away some of that damaging self-consciousness, because as in a Meisner exercise, for example, your attention is automatically on something that's very difficult to do. Like, because you're doing the medicine, you're thinking, how do I do this?
Right.
You're moving with the camera, and you're trying to stay with the operator, and you're trying to stay in frame, and you're just trying. So there's all this stuff inherent within the style of that show.
So that concludes the first part of our discussion with Laura Innes.
Oh, Jeff, we're going to dedicate this episode to Tony Ng.
Mm-hmm.
He's the second assistant director on ER and also How to Get Away with Murder. And he's driving right now to San Francisco, and he's going to listen to all the actor chats because he's very, very bored.
And he's bored? He's not a big fan?
No, I mean, he's a big fan. He's a big fan.
Excellent. Be sure to tune in next time for our second part of our discussion with Laura Innes, as she talks about the collaborative process of creating ER, working with Anthony Edwards, and preparing material for her performances.
This has been Actor Chats with Laura Innes.